Hi, I'm Melissa Taylor from Friends for Life Animal Shelter, and this is a harness training video meant to teach your dog to sit calmly and comfortably while you put their harness on, instead of shying away like Apollo here, who tends to look really uncomfortable as we start putting his harness on. It's also really great for dogs who get excited and wiggle around and maybe try to jump on you when you put their equipment on. You don't need a whole lot for this harness training. All you'll need are high-value treats that your dog loves. In this case, Apollo loves chicken jerky. And you'll want to prepare your dog by teaching them automatic sits, which means whenever you have a treat and they want to ask for it, they sit without you telling them to. You want to make sure that this automatic sitting is really warmed up before your first training session with harnesses. So in your first session, you're going to just hang out somewhere comfortable, maybe you'll be seated, and wait for your dog to sit. Then you're going to simultaneously extend one hand and another hand with treats. Your hand is going to be far enough away from your dog that they don't seem uncomfortable. Apollo gets up and sits down a lot during this training, but some dogs stay seated for a really long time, in which case it's a good idea to occasionally toss a treat onto the floor to encourage them to get up, and that gives them the chance to opt back into the training by sitting down. The reason for that is, and one of the most important rules about this training is, that you only proceed with the harness conditioning when the dog is sitting down. So here, his trainer waits for him to be seated, and then she extends her hand again. This exercise is repeated many times to ensure that Apollo is very comfortable with the extension of the hand. In the next phase of training, there is a delay between when the hand is extended and then the treat is offered to the dog. So here, Apollo's handler shows her hand first and then feeds him a treat. The pause is really brief. Again, this exercise is repeated quite a few times to ensure that Apollo is comfortable with the hand being extended. Up until now, all of Apollo's training has been taking place with the handler in a seated position, but now she's going to stand up and work with him a little bit from the standing position and eventually move over to the side where it's easier to access his harness. Even at this stage of training, she still tosses a treat occasionally to get him up and give him a chance to opt back into the training. Now that Apollo is comfortable with the handler standing at his side when she's working with him, she will start adding touch into the equation. When Apollo sits, the handler touches him and says good, and then gives him a treat. And she starts by touching him close by his face, by the jawline, and then makes her way gradually towards the harness. All the while, she's keeping an eye on him to make sure that his body language shows that he is very comfortable. Up until now, Apollo's trainer has had treats in her hand for more simultaneous conditioning, but now there's a little bit of a delay between when she touches him and gives him a treat. So she can have her treats in her bait bag, and that gives her both hands free to take off and put on his harness. So again, she's working with her treats and her bait bag now. Finally, Apollo's trainers are ready to incorporate taking off and putting on his harness into the training. The first step is to condition him to associate the sound of the buckles with getting a treat. So here, Apollo's trainer waits for him to sit and then unbuckles his buckle and then gives him a treat. Sometimes it can take a little while for him to sit back down, and if he wanted to, he could walk away or lie down, and that would be fine, but the trainer only proceeds with the training when Apollo sits back down. Just like with the buckles, Apollo gets a treat also whenever his harness is pulled up over his head or put on over his head. Up until now, we've been focusing only on taking Apollo's harness off, but you can use the exact same procedure to put a harness on him. Here, his trainer waits for him to sit, puts the harness over his head, gives him a treat, buckles one side of the harness, gives him a treat, then buckles the other side of the harness and gives him a final treat. At this stage, it's important to give him a treat at every point in the operation, but once he gets comfortable with the harness, he might only need one treat after you put the entire harness on, or maybe no treats once he starts to associate the harness with fun things that he does outside. Lastly, everybody who puts the harness on the dog should practice harness training to ensure that your dog is consistently calm and comfortable when having their equipment put on, because in the end, they can learn that putting on their equipment is as fun as lots of other activities that they associate with harnesses. If you have any questions about harness training or any other behavior and training questions, please check out our website at friendsforlife.org.